Every spring, something happens at garden centers that breaks my heart a little. I watch people walk straight past the rose section with their eyes down, like they're avoiding an old argument. I've talked to hundreds of gardeners over the years, and the story is almost always the same. They tried roses once, got burned by black spot or aphids, or a plant that just gave up, and decided roses weren't for them. I want to change that, because the roses being grown and sold right now are simply not the same plants that frustrated your grandmother. Plant breeders have spent decades quietly solving the problems that gave roses their fussy reputation, and the result is a generation of varieties that bloom their heads off from late spring all the way to frost, shrug off disease that would have killed older types, and ask almost nothing in return. So if you've written roses off, or if you've always wanted to grow them but held back out of fear, keep watching, because James Scott from Golden Age Gardening is about to introduce you to 7 roses that will make you look like a master gardener, even if you only visit your garden on weekends. And if you're new here and this kind of honest, no-fuss gardening advice sounds like what you've been looking for, I'd love it if you hit subscribe. We're building a community of gardeners who want results without the overwhelm. Before we get to the roses, before we work through the list, let's talk about the one thing all roses genuinely need, because if you skip this part and set a plant up wrong from the start, even the toughest varieties will underperform. Sun is non-negotiable. Every single rose on this list, and honestly, every rose in existence, needs at least 6 hours of direct sunlight each day. Not dappled light under a tree, not morning sun that disappears by noon. Full, open sky. Roses grown in shade get leggy and thin, and their bloom count drops dramatically. If your yard is heavily shaded, grow hostas. If you've got that south or west facing open border, that's where your roses belong. Drainage matters almost as much. Roses do not like sitting in wet soil. If your garden has heavy clay, work in a good amount of compost before planting, not just a handful on top, but work down into the root zone. This one investment pays dividends for years. Here's a piece of advice I give every gardener starting out with roses. Think of the first growing season as a courtship. You're asking a plant to establish itself in a new home, and that means deep, consistent watering for the first several weeks. Not daily shallow sprinkles. Actual deep soaking a couple of times a week so the roots chase moisture downward and anchor themselves. Once established, most modern shrub roses are surprisingly drought tolerant. But that first season shapes everything that follows. Finally, feeding. A slow-release granular rose fertilizer in early spring, and a second application around midsummer will keep the bloom cycles coming strong. It's a 10-minute task twice a year. That's the full extent of the feeding program for everything on this list. Now, let's get to the roses. Rose number 1. Let's open with color, because nothing in the garden stops people in their tracks, quite like a deep, saturated red rose in full bloom. Never Been Redder is one of those plants that earns its name completely. The blooms are a classic double form, the kind with layer upon layer of petals folding back on each other, and the color is a rich, velvety crimson that holds without fading even in summer heat. What makes this variety earn a spot on a low-maintenance list isn't just the color, though. It blooms in clusters, which means rather than one isolated flower at the tip of a cane, you get this generous burst of several blooms opening at once. And when one cycle finishes, the next one is already in motion. From late spring through first frost, this rose essentially doesn't stop. It matures to roughly 3 feet tall and 4 feet wide, a solid mid-border shrub, and it's rated for USDA zones 5 through 9. Which covers the vast majority of American gardens. It carries a light fragrance, nothing overwhelming, just enough to know you're near something beautiful. No deadheading required, no weekly spray schedule. Just plant it in a sunny spot, water it in well, and let it do its thing. Rose number 2. If red is one end of the rose spectrum, the next plant gives us the polar opposite, a white so pure it seems to gather light around it. Moondance is a floribunda rose, meaning it, too, produces flowers in clusters, and those clusters of creamy white blooms are almost otherworldly against dark green foliage. This is a rose with a very specific use case that I always recommend. Plant it near a seating area, close to a patio, beside a garden bench, at the edge of a deck. The fragrance is subtle but genuinely lovely, soft and sweet, not sharp or perfumed, and you only really catch it when you're sitting still, and the breeze brings it to you. That kind of garden moment is worth designing for. Moondance handles heat well, which is worth noting because heat is where a lot of white flowering plants disappoint. The petals can brown or drop in high temperatures, but this variety holds up beautifully through summer. It grows to roughly 4 to 5 feet in both height and spread, fits USDA zones 5 through 9, and requires the same basic care as everything else on this list. For anyone interested in a moon garden, that classic design concept of an all-white planting that glows at dusk and after dark, Moondance would be its centerpiece. Rose number 3. Let's shift the conversation for a moment, because the 2 roses we've covered so far are mid-border shrubs. But a lot of gardens have vertical space waiting to be used. A fence running the length of the property, an arbor over a pathway, a trellis against a wall, and that's where cherry frost steps in. Climbing roses have traditionally been the most demanding type to grow. They required tying in, careful pruning, and often had the worst disease resistance of any rose category. Cherry frost breaks that pattern. It's a true climber, reaching 6 to 7 feet tall with a spread of 3 to 4 feet, and it produces rounded, cup-shaped red blooms that repeat throughout the entire season. Not just a single dramatic flush in June and then silence. The disease resistance on this variety is outstanding, which matters enormously for a plant you're going to train along a structure. You want to be able to step back and let it grow, not monitor it for problems every week. Cherry frost is rated for USDA zones 4 through 10, which is an impressively wide range, meaning it's cold-hardy enough for genuinely harsh winters, and heat-tolerant enough for the deep south. If you've always imagined a rose-covered arbor as part of your garden, but assumed it was beyond your skill level or your schedule, this is the variety that makes that vision achievable. Rose number 4. There's a second climber on this list, and it earns its own conversation because it brings something completely different to the table. Up Lilac Days sits in a color category that's genuinely rare among roses. A soft, almost dreamlike blend of lilac, blue, and pink that reads as antique and romantic, in a way that pure pink or red simply can't match. Botanically speaking, true blue roses don't exist. The genes for blue pigmentation simply aren't present in the species. What breeders have achieved with varieties like this one is a cool-toned, lavender-influenced pink that photographs beautifully and pairs with almost any other color in the garden. It's one of those plants that people always ask about. Up Lilac Days is considered a mini climber. It typically reaches 6 to 8 feet tall with a spread of 2 to 4 feet, making it well suited to a smaller trellis or a fence panel where a full climber would be too ambitious. The flowers have a delicate, genuine fragrance, and the disease resistance is excellent. Zones 4 through 9. This is a rose for gardeners who want something that feels a little unexpected, a little more romantic than the standard palette, without taking on any extra work. Rose number 5. At this point in our list, I want to talk about a variety that deserves far more attention than it typically gets at garden centers, where flashier colors tend to dominate. Pink Double Knockout belongs to a family of roses that genuinely changed the industry. The original Knockout rose launched over 2 decades ago with one overriding goal: to create a disease-resistant, continuously blooming, fuss-free shrub rose that would perform for ordinary gardeners rather than dedicated hobbyists. It succeeded so completely that it became one of the best-selling landscape plants in North America. The series has since expanded to include multiple colors and bloom forms, and Pink Double Knockout is, in my view, one of the most satisfying members of the family. The blooms are a bright, unapologetic bubblegum pink, full double flowers that are anything but understated, and they appear in steady cycles from spring all the way through to hard frost. One of the biggest selling points for time-pressed gardeners: you do not need to deadhead this rose. Removing spent flowers to encourage reblooming is one of the tasks people most associate with rose maintenance, and this variety simply doesn't require it. The plant cleans itself up and keeps pushing new buds on its own schedule. It grows to around 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide, handles USDA zones 5 through 11, and is genuinely one of the most adaptable roses on the market. If you only grow one rose from this list, make it one that fits your color scheme. But know that this one will never let you down. If this kind of practical, experience-based guidance is useful to you, leaving a like on this video is one of the best ways to tell me to keep making it. Rose number 6. Now let's talk about the gardeners who are working with smaller spaces, because not every garden has room for a 4-foot shrub rose. Urban gardens, courtyard plantings, raised beds along a narrow border, these situations call for a compact plant that punches above its weight. Pretty Polly Pink is exactly that. This is a small rose, maturing at only about 2.5 feet tall and 3 feet wide. In the context of a large mixed border, it almost disappears, but planted as an edging rose, in a container, or along the front of a foundation planting, it becomes one of the most flower-covered plants in the entire garden. In early summer, the bloom count is extraordinary. The plant essentially covers itself in deep, vivid pink flowers, to the point where you can barely see the foliage beneath them. The cold hardiness is impressive for a compact variety, rated down to Zone 4, which means it survives real winters without protection. The disease resistance is equally strong. This is one of those plants that takes everything you throw at it: heat, cold, clay soil, amended with compost, occasional neglect during a busy stretch, and just keeps performing. If you have a friend or family member who's always wanted to try roses but has a small garden or is nervous about the commitment, Pretty Polly Pink is what I'd put in their hands. It's about as close to a sure thing as gardening gets. Rose number 7. For the final rose on this list, I want to end with fragrance, because for many gardeners, fragrance is the whole point of roses in the first place. There's something about walking past a rose in full bloom on a warm evening, catching that scent in the air, that no other flower really replicates. It's why people have been growing roses for thousands of years. Reminiscent Coral delivers that experience. The blooms are a deep, warm coral that carries an old-fashioned quality. It looks like the kind of rose you'd find pressed between the pages of a very old book, or growing in a cottage garden that's been tended for generations. The fragrance is genuine and strong, not faint like some of the disease-resistant modern varieties, and it's the kind of scent that stops you mid-step. This one grows to around 2.5 to 3 feet tall, with a spread of about 2 feet, which makes it very manageable. It's rated for zones 4 through 9. The disease resistance is outstanding. The only task it asks of you is a quick pruning in early spring, cutting back the canes by about a third before new growth begins, which encourages the plant to branch more freely and produce an even fuller flush of blooms. That 10-minute job once a year is the full extent of the maintenance ask. For a garden that prioritizes scent, for someone who grows flowers partly for bringing them inside, for placing in a vase on a kitchen table, for the simple pleasure of fragrance on the evening air, this rose is the answer. 7 roses, all of them legitimately low maintenance, all of them capable of performing beautifully without a complicated spray routine or a professional's level of attention. What I hope this list shows is that the range available to you is genuinely wide. You can grow red, white, pink, coral, or lilac. You can grow climbers or compact shrubs. You can prioritize fragrance, or bloom count, or cold hardiness, or the perfect fit for a small space. The principles that tie them all together are simple: full sun, good drainage with organic matter worked into the soil if needed, deep watering during establishment, a slow-release fertilizer in spring, and again in midsummer. That's the foundation everything on this list is built on. And if you get those basics right, these plants will reward you with months of blooms. What I'd encourage you to do is think about one gap in your garden, a bare fence, a dull corner, a section of lawn you've been meaning to convert, and choose one rose from this list that fits the space, the light, and the color you want to live with. Start with one. Get it established, let it show you what it can do. Roses earn your trust quickly when the variety is right. If you've grown any of the roses from this list, or if you have a favorite low-maintenance variety that I didn't mention, share it in the comments below. I read every one, and some of the best recommendations I've ever passed on came directly from this community. Thanks for spending this time with Golden Age Gardening. New videos go up every week, always in the business of making gardening feel more possible, not more complicated. I'll see you in the next one.